12 additional plots, plus our adaptive raised beds are going in this year, and they all filled up. So we have a very busy year ahead of us, which will be very exciting. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over the rules, the handbook as it is, talk about that a little bit, as well as we're going to talk about some of the new things that we're adding this year to the garden, and a lot of different resources we have for you. While you are sitting and listening, there's some pieces of paper that have been distributed that look like this out on the table, and we can always distribute more too, and there should be some markers. What those are for is if you have any feedback, any ideas, any questions, anything pertaining to the garden that we could perhaps make it better, please jot it down. You don't have to put your name on it, just jot it down, and when you leave, there's at that circular table, there's a jar to put it in. We're always trying to think about how we can make this better, how we can expand it, how we can serve people the best way we possibly can. So please, if you have ideas, go ahead and write those down for us. Okay. So, a few other announcements before we start going through the handbook. This was, I got this from a few different people. It's organic gardening classes for beginners. I highly encourage you guys to take this if you're new to gardening, or if you're not, if you're new to organic gardening. These classes meet at the Goodman Community Center, or actually they meet at different places, but the first class is layout and garden planning. The second is soil prep and composting. The third is fruit and vegetable selection, herb companion planting and fertilizing, and secondary and fall planting. And it costs $15. That's it for all these classes. So there's information out front if you would like to take that. I'm also going to put it up on the website. So this would be a great resource for you guys to take advantage of. If you haven't already, everyone grab a free seed packet over there. We did get donated from High Mowing Seeds. It's an organic seed company. They donated about 100 seed packets for us. So if we have extras, we'll make sure that everyone gets more as they leave. Last year, if you were here last year, remember we had thousands of seed packets. And that's because, unfortunately, Old Seed Company that was based here in Madison had gone out of business, and they gave us all we wanted. So we don't have quite as many seeds to give out as we did last year. However, there's this really cool new program that is starting. It's called the Dane County Seed Library, and the E.D. Locke Public Library here in McFarland is one of the sites. And everyone should have gotten one of these. If you didn't get one of these brochures when you came in, you can get it when you go out the door. What it is you can check out, I think it's 5 or maybe 6 packets of seeds. And they have all sorts of different ones. They're all organic, mostly heirloom seeds. The list of the different, the different vegetables they have is in here. Then what you do is you plant them. In the fall, you harvest them, you save the seeds, put them back in the packet, and return it to the library for next year. And so it's building a seed bank for years to come. Now, don't worry if you don't know how to save seeds. We are going to be doing workshops throughout the summer and the fall on how to do that, hosted by the E.D. Locke Public Library and the UW Extension Service. So there will be opportunities for you to learn about that. And if your crop fails or if you don't get a chance to save the seeds, there's no fine, okay? So I don't want people to worry. There's no fines for it. So do keep that in mind, and we're really hoping this is a really successful pilot year of this program. So do take advantage of that and go and check some out there. Your plot assignments, you should have all learned what your plot assignment is when you came in. If you don't know, check with either me or Bill at the front before you leave, and we'll make sure you know what your plot is and where you're going to be in the garden. There is our garden map up there. Actually, Greg, would you grab the garden map and just show everyone in case they didn't see it before? That's what our garden is going to look like this year. Ta-da! So all of the brown squares, those represent a full 20-foot by 20-foot plot. Now, if you have a half plot, let's say you are 11A. So you would find the square for 11, and the first half of it is your half plot. The second half of it would be whoever has 11B. Does that make sense? So from the bottom up. So A's are always closer to the street, B's are closer to the cemetery. okay? Some other new things that are going on this year, you'll see the fruit and vegetable, or fruit hedge rather. That's the kind of beige-ish long rectangle closest to the parking lot of the homestead. That is, we're going to be putting in fruits for anyone to harvest in the garden. And it's going to keep the rabbits out. Yeah, absolutely. Let's just keep thinking that. So that's going to be rhubarb, currants, what else? Raspberries. We're going to be putting all sorts of things there and starting to nurture those so that in years to come everyone can harvest from that. One of the new things we're doing is putting in our adaptive garden, and that's the green, the bright green at the very bottom of the map closest to the sidewalk. The adaptive garden is going to be raised garden beds, so they'll be a knee high or taller. They're going to be made out of cedar, so safe wood for planting in. They're going to be filled with a combination of topsoil and Purple Cow organic compost. And there's going to be a walkway of crushed granite packed gravel so that it's wheelchair accessible. At this time we have 4 of them filled. So 4 different people have rented those out. And one of those garden beds is going to be made by Derek. Derek, can you just stand up? I won't make you talk. But this is Derek. He is an Eagle Scout, and he's working on his Eagle Scout project to build us one of the raised beds, and as well, you're building a bench to go next to it, correct? And his, if you look over here, that is his board. You can see a picture of the bench over there and some garden plots. So if you get a chance afterwards, come and take a peek at that, what he's doing. So thank you, Derek, for doing that for us. So this walkway here, this is 10-foot wide walkway. In the adaptive garden, it's always going to have 3 to 5 feet between anything in there. So between a bench and the garden bed, there will be 3 to 5 feet because we're following the, is it ADA? ADA recommendations for wheelchairs throughout that space. There's also going to be, right, a picnic table in the middle of it. There will be a picnic table in the middle of it so wheelchairs can roll up to the sides and families can sit around. So that'll be in the middle. And we're still kind of playing around with the placement of everything. We've also talked that it might be nice to plant some dwarf or semi-dwarf cherry trees on the corners so there's a little bit of dappled shade in there. So we're kind of waiting to see if we're going to end up implementing more than 4 beds this year before we finalize the placement inside of it. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Yeah. So that's the adaptive garden. And speaking of the adaptive garden, we raised a bunch of money from the Hootenanny for that. You can just set that down. You don't understand. We raised a bunch of money at the Hootenanny for that, but also the United Church of Christ this morning at service presented me with a check for $892, and at service they got another $300 donation. So thank you to the United Church of Christ. So they have been incredibly, incredibly generous with their help here. So that's wonderful. The other new thing that we're going to be putting into here is a school garden. I've been working with Cindy. Cindy, raise your hand up. That's Cindy White. She does environmental ed resource work for the school district, K through 5, correct? And originally, why I got so fired up about doing a community garden is because I'm really passionate about doing gardening with children and gardening education with young people. And so this is something that's been on my radar for a few years. So this year, what we're doing is the entire first grade at the McFarland School District is going to be participating in the garden. Each classroom of 20 students is going to have a 10 by 10 foot plot, and they're going to be growing 3 sisters crops, which is corn, squash, and beans. They're going to plant it this spring. Families will volunteer to take care of it over the summer, and next fall, those first graders will no longer be first graders, they'll be second graders. So they'll move on to their second grade classroom, but they'll leave behind these journals to tell the new students in their classrooms how to take care of their garden, how to harvest their garden, how to preserve the seeds, and then they are going to have their parents cook food from what they harvest and have a harvest festival and invite the second graders back and share the feast. So Cindy has been working tirelessly with that. Do you have anything else you want to mention about that? No? We are looking for donations through the school district, though, for some specific things for the school garden, and I think we'll put those up on the website. The classrooms each need like garden gloves and hand trowels and things like that we are going to be asking parents and community members for. So if you're interested in helping out with that, it'll be on our website with information on how to donate. But thank you to Cindy. Round of applause for all your hard work that you've been doing with that. So the school garden is going to be right behind the adaptive garden, and the reason for that is some of our students at the school district are also in need of using wheelchairs. So part of the adaptive garden will actually be one L-shaped raised bed for the school district, and that'll be the one closest to the school district plot, specifically for students who are wheelchair bound. So there will be that too. The pumpkin patch is no longer the pumpkin patch. The pumpkin patch is now garden plots. So some of you, if you're in bed number 4, that's the 4th big long bed of 12 plots, that is now garden plots. And then we're still in the works figuring out if we're going to have a pumpkin patch or not. If we do, it'll be new area that's currently grass to the right of our gardens. But yes, thank you for pointing that out. Those brochures are from last year. There's just a few of them left. But you can see how much things have changed from our last year plan to this year plan. So quite a bit. Be looking in the thistle, by the way, and we'll also put on the website, because as it gets warmer, we're going to be asking, as far as the fruit hedge, for people, if they have rhubarb at home, that they could split to donate some of their rhubarb or donate some of their raspberry canes or donate stuff like that. So if you have fruits growing at home, you can donate them. Yeah?
One of the things we talked about, too, is having a community herb garden.
Community herb garden, yes. One thing you can see on, I don't know where the map went, but there's going to be a little...
You get the map again?
Vanna, where are you?
Slack.
So there's a space right here between the youth garden and the school district garden, so there we might be able to put a communal herb bed in there. The other option, and we can talk about this with our 4-H'ers at the 4-H youth garden, is last year we had some space for doing some herbs, so we might, I probably shouldn't mention this until I get the okay from my 4-H'ers, but I was going to suggest to them that maybe we could open that up for the community to come and have too. But that's a good point, because one of the things you cannot grow in your garden is anything in the mint family. No mint. No mint, okay? And a lot of herbs are very kind of invasive herbs, so it's nice to have them in a contained area. And really, who needs piles and piles and piles of oregano? You need like this much, right? So it'd be nice to have a communal space that we can all just kind of do that. So that's in the works too. Thank you, Ron. And if you have herbs at home, that'll be another thing that we'll be asking once we have a space prepared for it, that you can come, thank you, that you can come and donate some of your perennial herbs for that. Okay, oh, and I forgot to mention the 4-H garden. The 4-H garden is going to have another season. Thank goodness last year we got most of our hardscaping in, so this year it's just going to be plants we get to plant in and do things. But one thing that we will be doing differently is we're going to be doing workshops in the garden. And they'll be bi-weekly, we hope, workshops that will be led by 4-H'ers. So by children, we'll be leading workshops for other kids or adults to come and learn about gardening. And those will be promoted through the newspaper, through our website, things like that. So keep that in mind, especially if you have little ones and you want them to get involved with some gardening stuff. We'll be doing all sorts of different things in the youth garden for kids to come to. Full plots are 20 foot by 20 foot, half plots are 10 foot by 20 foot. When you go out there, it's not done now, obviously, but when we're ready to open up the garden, you will have 4 wooden stakes that'll show your corners, that's your space, and in the middle will be either a flag or a wooden marker with your family name on it, and that's what you will get. If you are renewing your plot from last year, you're going to get it as is. If you're getting a new plot that used to be pumpkin patch, it will be retilled before you get it, okay? So that will be all ready for you in the spring. We do not have an opening garden date right now. One thing we learned last year is we set all the dates, like all the dates for all of our events, everything we set. In the spring, we were so organized, and we ended up having to cancel or reschedule most of them because of weather. So we are just going to play it by ear. I will let everyone know when our opening date is, and we'll be communicating a lot more by newsletter, email, and website this year for that. So keep you posted. Everyone should generally visit their garden at least once a week. That's kind of our expectation for you to keep it tidy. If you decide not to use your plot, that's okay. We had 2 plots last year, I think, that turned over. And that's okay. If you need to stop gardening for whatever reason, we understand, life happens. Just let us know, and what we will do is, depending on the time of year, if it's early enough in the season, we'll give it to someone on the waiting list to take it over. If it's past a certain date and it's hard to kind of get started mid-season, what we'll do is we'll put cover crop over it. And you may have noticed last year there was 1 full plot that was in cover crop. We planted it in buckwheat, which is also called a green manure. Then you just till it in and it helps build soil fertility. So that's fine. Just let us know though, okay? There are no refunds though on plot fees if you leave mid-season. If you have to go on vacation, or if you or someone in your family gets sick, or for whatever reason you're having a hard time taking care of your plot but you don't want to give it up, that's fine too. What we recommend you doing is trying to find volunteers, neighbors, plot neighbors, things like that. Last year, Ron Dennis put up some wonderful cork boards in our garden shed, and this year we're going to make use of them much more. We're going to use it as a communication center, so there will be a place for you to put up there like, hey, I'm going to be gone on vacation this week to this week. Who can help me? Please call me, or something like that. If you cannot find someone to help you, that's fine. Let us know. We'll find someone for you. Okay? Just let us know. So each year you have to reapply for your plot. Returning gardeners get first dibs. So all of you will be able to renew your plot this year until probably January 31st. You'll also get a chance to expand your plot. If you have a half plot, you can expand to a full plot. Right now we're limiting 1 20 by 20 foot full plot per household, so we can accommodate more people. Okay, parking. Please park on the street when you're gardening. We ask that you don't use the Homestead parking lot or the United Church of Christ parking lot, just because we need to leave those open for those communities of people. So please make sure you park on the street. If street parking is all full, which I've never seen that happen, but if it's all full, you can park at the municipal center, the McFarland Municipal Center, which is kitty corner to us across the street from the library. So keep that in mind. Please don't drive in the garden area. Our insurance doesn't like that. Just don't do that, please. If you need help transporting stuff, you let us know. We'll get you help, and we'll move that with you. Pets are not allowed in the gardens. This is kind of a universal thing for community gardens. Dogs can't be walked on the garden pathways or near garden plots. It's just to maintain a safe space for food, growing food. Wild animals, we had a major problem with bunnies last year. We'll probably have a major problem again this year. That's kind of how it goes. Unfortunately, you cannot poison them. You cannot trap them. You cannot shoot them. You cannot harm them. You just shoo them away. Shoo them away. Along with their nest. Yes, there was a nest of bunnies in our basil patch in the 4-H youth garden, and we were out there working in it one day, and they were moving the basil around, and it was just like, oh my gosh. We encourage you to use fencing, yeah.
Just an idea that I saw one garden that actually had a hawk perch to control the bunnies in a natural way.
Yes, we've thought about that, in fact. And it's something that we might want to implement because it's kind of an organic, safe approach, encouraging nature to kind of take its toll. Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, hair?
Spread dog hair or any hair.
Yep. And we had some gardeners doing that last year. It was always a little disturbing when the wind would pick up and be like, oh my gosh, what is that? Hair. But that's fine. That's a fine solution, yeah. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So some suggestions for dealing with bunnies in particular. Hawk tower is one, where it's basically, have you done this before, Bill, where it's a really high post, right? It's a high post where you encourage hawks to perch, and hawks like bunnies, and so hopefully it would take care of itself. So that's something that we could look into. And then she had suggested hair, like from a hair salon, cut hair. Sometimes wild animals don't like the smell of it or something like that. So that is another approach that you could use too. Okay. But fencing is something that we highly recommend for gardens, and I'll talk about fencing in a couple of minutes. Restrooms, we do not have restrooms out on our site. You can use the restrooms at the municipal center or the public library. Again, we ask that you don't go to the Homestead or the UCC for those purposes. Water, we have garden hoses out there, but they are not zoned or whatever for human consumption or pet consumption, actually. And it's something about the underground hoses can leach, I don't know. Just don't drink out of it. So just don't drink out of it, okay? They're not supposed to drink out of it. There's little signs that say not for human consumption or something like that. We encourage you to bring water out. If it gets really hot, I did this a couple times last summer. I brought one of those big coolers and filled it with ice water and put it in the shed. So we might do that too, just so that there's access. But you can also go to get water from the water fountains at the municipal center or the library. Let's see, fencing. Like I said, we encourage you to put fencing up. We encourage you to be resourceful with whatever you can find to do that within reason. You cannot use brightly colored fencing like the orange plastic construction fencing. That's not allowed in the garden, and it's not going to keep out bunnies. What else? You can't use like solid plywood. That's a bad idea for a number of reasons too. If you want more ideas for fencing, you let us know, and I can give you some different resources for that. One thing that we had a problem with a bit last year is you can grow things grow things vertically on your fencing. Just make sure if you're doing that, you're not doing that somewhere that's bordering your neighbor's plot, because if it starts growing into their plot, then that becomes a problem. And they can pick that. If it's in their plot, they pick it. That's theirs. So just try to be cognizant of that. Definitely, if you're going to grow things on fencing, try and do it on your fencing that is out to a communal area like a walkway or something like that. Weeds are the biggest problem for community gardens, because weeds in your plot become everyone's problems if they go to seed. So that's one thing that we really harp on is please keep your weeds under control. Unfortunately, you don't have as many tricks in your pocket as you might if you were doing this in your home garden, because we do not allow any synthetic herbicides in the gardens at all, okay? So we are using an organic approach in the gardens, and you are limited to what you can use. So I'm going to actually have Bill talk about this, and he's also going to talk about mulch. Yeah, is that okay? Yep. So this is Bill Stoneman, if you don't already know him.
It's fairly low in phosphate, which are key elements in the growing of our garden plants. Now last year we benefited from the fact that we still did a lot of organic matter from the sod that was there, and that went through a process of what we call mineralization, or the breakdown of that organic matter into components of nutrients that plants can actually take in and digest or utilize in their growth. This year, we're expecting that's going to be fairly well depleted, so you need to think about fertility in your plots. Even those people who are new, the plots you're going into were used before, either in the pumpkin patch where they were in the other part of the garden. So we've implemented a couple of things this year, well, we actually had in place last year as well. The one program is that we'll have organic fertilizer available for you. We did this last year. This was made up of a composted turkey litter, and it's relatively decent in terms of fertility content. We ask that you not use chemical fertilizers in your garden. So if you go to Menards and they say, hey, we'll use this Peter's stuff or this soluble fertilizer, whatever. We ask that you not use those because we're trying to follow organic practices. If you use those in your starters at home, that's fine, not a big deal, but out in the garden, we'll supply bags of fertilizers. They'll be in a trash can either inside the shed, depending on how bad they smell. There's a couple of brands that we utilize. One is Sustain, which is turkey litter, which doesn't smell, and the other one was Chicky Doo-Doo, and you can imagine what that is. So both of those will be available. We'll put some instructions up on the bulletin board as to how much you should use per foot of row or per transplant or whatever. They're relatively soft materials. They don't burn your plants, so you can actually put them right at the base of the plant and water them in. Would be a good advice, or lightly till them in around your plant or along the row before planting. We also are implementing something this year in terms of supplying organic compost and mulch. Last year we sold marsh hay mulch at this meeting, and we're gonna make available this year at least straw mulch. Because of the season last year, there may not be marsh hay mulch available. Marsh hay mulch is actually superior for creating a mat to prevent weeds from emerging. But we have a local farmer who will sell us straw, and we're making straw mulch available for you. I highly advise using mulch. It really does beat down and prevent a lot of the weeds from happening. You still get weeds, you still have to work your garden, but it really does help prevent weeds. Some people don't like mulch, so that's your choice, but we're going to make mulch available. And also this year we've worked out a deal with a company called Purple Cow Organics for some organic compost, a good source of soil structure, a good source of some soil fertility, and then also a good source of some water holding capacity. Although our soils are relatively high in clay, they may not be high necessarily in the ability to hold or maintain fertility, and composted materials actually will hold on and help keep fertilizer nutrients available to the plant over time as well. So we're introducing those this year. I have order forms with me here. We'd like to get as many orders today as possible. I have a brochure on the Purple Cow Organic Compost, its benefits and so forth. When we talk to organic farmers and we talk about organic farming, the first thing we ever talk about is, what are you doing about your soil? Soil is not just something that holds a plant up. It is the source of all the nutrients available to those plants, the water available to those plants. The only thing that plant gets from the air is carbon dioxide. Okay, and then the rainfall, of course. And carbon is, of course, the major building molecule in a plant, and carbon is an organic molecule. So when we talk about soil, we talk about, first, we need to improve the soil in our gardens. Second, we need to work with as many natural systems as possible. These soils are teeming with microorganisms. Chemical materials tend to sort out and segregate and cause only certain microflora to survive and grow in your garden. Organic sources and composts help to those fungi, bacteria, even protozoa and other little creatures you learned about in biology class grow and thrive in that soil. And the more diversity you have in a soil circumstance, the less likelihood of disease, the less likelihood of insects being able to form a major population. So soil is number one. Second, work with natural systems. And the third, feed the soil. Continue to feed the soil. Watch your plants as they're growing during the season. If your tomato plants are all leaves and vines, you've probably over-fertilized. Not much you can do about it at that time. But so just kind of watch your plants. If they start to turn yellow on the bottom, they need some fertilizer. That's just one key. If they're very purple, some of the grasses like corn and so forth, if they're very purple early in the season, they may need some fertilizer. Okay? If they're yellow throughout the season, they may need some fertilizer. These fertilizers we have, although they're not real high in some of the micro elements that are necessary for plant growth, they do contain some of those micro elements, and the soil here natively has some of those micro elements. So I wouldn't worry about much other than the major NPK product, which is the organic fertilizer. We also have an organic fertilizer out here today that is one of our door prizes. If you want to and bring your own fertilizers, from Menards or the hardware store or whatever, look for the organic seal on them. It's a little seal. It's OMRI, OMRI, Organic Materials Review Institute. That's an indicator that they are allowed for organic farmers, therefore they're allowed in organic gardens. And there are a few spray materials that you can use for pests, like rabbits. If you want to sprinkle some blood meal around the outside of your garden, that sometimes will prevent them. If you want to use some pepper spray, not the kind you carry in your spray. There are pepper sprays that you can use around the base of your garden. Make sure that if you use anything like that, you're not contaminating your neighbors. Okay?
One thing I did want to say is these are discounted, right?
Yes, these are all discounted.
So we've worked out deals with these different farmers and Purple Cow Organics, so you would be getting a discount if you order through us versus if you were to go and buy them elsewhere, right?
Straw mulch, I would recommend on the 20 by 20s, at least 2 bales, okay? For the Purple Cow Organics, on the 20 by 20s, I would recommend 2 yards of material. If it feels like it's too much money or too much movement of monkey business, 2 yards is 6 by 3 by 3, so it's a pretty good chunk of soil, but spread out over your garden. So I'm going to go ahead and pass these out. We'd like to collect as many today as possible. We'll put together an order for delivery by about opening day. Okay.
And so when you leave, make sure that you touch base. If you do want to order them and you have your form filled out, touch base with Bill on your way out. We are building compost at the back of our garden. We encourage you to continue to help us build that, but it's not quite ready. We'll be doing some moving and sifting of it, and we'll kind of let you know as it gets ready. But it takes a couple of years to get a compost pile going where we can actually be self-sufficient with it. There were some concerns raised by different people last year about horse manure. You're supposed to have it cook for a certain period of time at a certain temperature, yada, yada, right? If not, there's a chance that there's certain bacteria that would be harmful that could still be part of that manure. Since we don't have the capacity to monitor that right now, what we've decided is we are not going to do manure at this time for our gardens, just because we're worried that that could be a possible source of contamination. That said, we are looking into seeing if we can find some that is well rotted to the certain, we're going to try and figure out if we can make that happen. Does that make sense? But right now we're moving more towards finished compost that we know is safe. Garden tools, we have a lot of garden tools in the shed. That is for everyone to use. Please return them to the shed. Don't leave them in your plots. Please return them to the shed. Make sure that they're reasonably cleaned off and in good repair. If they do need to be fixed, please let either the garden monitor, I'll tell you about that in a little bit, or myself or Bill or Ron know, and we'll make sure that we get it repaired. You can bring your own tools, but we're not responsible for them. So you can bring your own tools and take them back home with you, but if they get lost or broken, that's kind of that's on you. Let's see, rototiller. We had a rototiller donated to the garden that is being refurbished right now. We are going to have it certain days. We will let people know when it's available, and you can come and sign up to use it for a half hour at a time. It will be free for you to use. The garden will cover the gas for it. We will have that a few different times throughout the season if you would like to use that. You have to be 18 years or older, and you need to make sure that there's no children around when you're using it. Water. This year we are hoping to trench down the rest of our water lines. Last year we had some above ground hoses that went across some of the garden plots, if you remember. We're hoping to be able to get out there and trench down, so those will be permanently underground this year. We will have enough hoses so that there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think 8 spigots will be out there this year. So each one will have a hose. If you use the water, make sure that you turn it off. You roll up the hose. You bleed out the water. So, Ron, would you be able to tell cannot use water overnight. The garden closes at 9 o'clock, so all the water needs to be turned off by 9 o'clock. You cannot use sprinklers in the garden. For one thing, that's a very inefficient use of water. A lot of it gets wasted to evaporation. And also it can go into your neighbor's plots, and they may not want their plot watered. However, you can use soaker hoses. We do not have soaker hoses that are garden McFarland Community Garden soaker hoses, but if you want to bring some from home, hook them up and use them in your plot, that is fine. You just have to be there while you're using them. Soaker hoses are a great thing. They're a really efficient way to use water. And if you have any more questions about what soaker hoses are and how to use them, you just let us know and we can tell you more about that. We already talked about chemicals. Plants, try and just be cognizant of your neighbors. I already talked about vines. Make sure vines aren't going into your neighbor's garden. Tall plants like corn and sunflowers can really shade, so look at the packets. If you're getting like a 12-foot sunflower, you probably don't want to do a hedge of 12-foot sunflowers that borders your neighbor's plot. Otherwise, they're going to have a real hard time growing things. Please don't grow mint. Did I mention that? Don't grow mint. Catnip is part of the mint family. Don't grow that. There's all that. I was hoping, Ron, you'd be able to talk about the food pantry real quick. Last year we donated, how many? It was like over 1,000 pounds, I think. Over 1,000 pounds to 11 area food pantries. So, and we continued to get, at the end of the season, requests, right? Do you have more produce coming? Do you have more produce coming? These food pantries are starving for fresh produce. And so we were so happy that we could help them out. We want to improve that process this year even more so. And Ron deserves an enormous round of applause because he's the one who delivered all of it. We could definitely use more crates that are stacking so that if one gets filled, we put another one on top and fill it. Otherwise, they just get piled on top of and gets ruined. So that's something we could definitely use. But we will put something up on our website about things that we're still looking for because there are plenty of things. One thing in particular, we're going to try, and Greg also does our mowing, by the way. He does all the mowing. And it's very important that you keep the edges of your plot clean. Don't put your shovels there and leave them there. Don't do that. Don't put rocks there. Don't put stuff like that could get caught in the mower. So be very cognizant of that. And that's also a place where we have a lot of problem with weeds coming up, is like right on the borders. So be very careful about that. And one thing we're doing along the middle aisle this year is we're hoping to put down that edging and do mulch down the middle aisle. So if you see, you know that black plastic edging that Lance, do you guys know what I'm talking about? We're looking for that, and you can usually find it on Craigslist or FreeCycle or something. We need a lot of that. So that's one thing. If you have any, grab that, put it out by the garden shed. Yeah. Speaking of refuse, I mentioned rocks and sticks. We have a trash can. That's the green bin with the green top. We have a recycling can that has the brown top, and those will be taken out every Wednesday night. We have the compost piles at the back, so any non-diseased plants, vegetable scraps, yada yada can go into the compost pile. What can't go in the compost pile is anything that has seed heads on it. No weed seeds can go in there. And if you're worried about, like, you have some plant that has big purple spots all over it, it's breaking out in some disgusting disease, don't put that in the compost pile. Because everyone will have that problem then. Speaking of that, diseases, insects, all of those problems, there's going to be a resource board with all sorts of material from UW Extension for identifying different problems, and I would be happy to help you out with that too. I know you have a few master gardeners here. Who's master gardener? Holly is. I am. I know there's more, so we have master gardeners who can help out with that. Okay, food pantry we talked about. Conflicts. If you have conflicts, I get to deal with them, so come and talk to me. And if there's unresolved issues, it will go on to the garden committee. We had no conflicts last year, so that was wonderful. Let's keep that up. Volunteer hours. Each plot needs to do 4 volunteer hours, and you just keep track of it. It's honor system. Most people last year did well above 4 volunteer hours. But keep that in mind. There's going to be lots of opportunities. Those volunteer hours are beyond your own plot. So there will be garden work days once a month. If you want to help us, we need to strip and reseal the, what is that called? Going up to the shed? Ramp going up to the shed. That's going to be happening. All sorts of things that we have going on that we'll need volunteers for, and that'll be put out on email. Garden monitors I talked about, and there's a sign-up list over there. So if you want to sign up for a week as garden monitor, your duties are taking the trash out on Wednesday night, bringing the bins back in, or Tuesday night, would it be Wednesday? Wednesday night, bringing them back in Thursday morning, making sure the water spigots are turned off, telling us if there's any broken tools, and one thing too is watering the flower beds at the very front of the garden. It's a 1 week long commitment. If you have a community club, like if you're part of Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or Lions Club, they can take a week too. So go back to your club and say, hey, do you want to sign up for a week as garden monitor? We would be happy to have your organization help. Let's do some door prizes. And then Chris Olgren. Olgren, here you go. Do you want to? Here, thank you, Chris. Chris is one of our new gardeners this year. Okay, I have another one. Here, do you want to pick one, love? Maddie. Okay, here's another garden hat. What does it say?
I don't know.
Lee Stokes. Lee Stokes. Yay. Ruthie Berger. Ruthie Berger gets a pair of leather gardening gloves. Maddie, would you take that back to her? Can you raise your hand up, Ruthie? There she is. Okay, let's see here. You pick one. Okay. Leah? Is there a Leah? L-I-A? Your daughter? Let's see. How about, oh, this would be a nice one for your daughter. How about this? A little.
Oh, boy, that's going to make her day.
This is donated by Autumn. Where's Autumn? Autumn's over there.
Thank you, Autumn.
There you go. Okay. Here, will you pick one out of here? You can't look. Okay, what's that say? Another Leah, but I think Leah's got all the luck today. Here, pick another one. Phil Jones. The Jones family's taking it today. This is tomato, herb, and vegetable plant food from Bill Stoneman. There you go. This is an example of one that would be good for you to buy. Okay. Buddy, you want to pick one?
Sure.
Judy Adrian. Judy is a returning gardener. And these are, how about these copper labels that you can put in your garden? There you go. I'll pick another one for me. Joe Tripolin. Oh, yeah. How about some home canned salsa from the garden? That is from the garden made by Autumn Sabo. And one more. Rex. Rex gets potting mix. I hope you're going to start some seeds. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much to everybody.